recording is on.
Hello, everybody. My name is Dr. Jayashri Bhatt, and I'm one of the Hindu chaplains in the University of Calgary. I'm also a senator with the University of Calgary, and I did the Hindu chaplaincy at the university 3 years ago. And I'm a life member with Hindu Society of Calgary and been very active and actively involved in the society for a long time. That's my background about Hinduism. My personal professional background is I have 2 graduate degrees, one in clinical biochemistry and one in classical music of India. And I was a cancer researcher for 27 years in the University of Calgary's Research and Development. And later on, when I finished my PhD in classical music, I've been visiting many Canadian, American, and European universities teaching classical music of India in the at various levels in the undergrad levels. And it has been a wonderful journey so far. And I'm really enjoying having this discussion with all of you. So let's start.
Great. Well, thank you, Jayashri. Now I'll get Dr. Tony Barber to introduce himself here.
Yes, thank you. I'm Dr. A.W. Barber. I am also a Buddhist priest. Was ordained in Japan. I teach courses on Asian culture, both South Asia and East Asia. And my research area is primarily Buddhism. I've published extensively in the field and actually have a new book coming out in about a month on dialogue between Christians and Buddhists. And I'm very happy to be able to join with my fellows here and have an interesting discussion about emotions and from the Buddhist perspective.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful.
Yeah. And I'm Father Adrian Martins. I'm the Episcopal Vicar for Lay Associations, and I also work as the Ecumenical and Interreligious Coordinator for the Diocese of Calgary. I'm also an associate priest here at Ascension Catholic Parish in North Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And so I thank you for all the great discussions and dialogue we're going to have. So Jayashri, since you started here, why don't you kind of give us a bit of a summary on the teaching about anger as related to emotions and passion in Hinduism?
Okay. I'll take the help of some of the readings I've done with the Hindu scriptures. Hindu scriptures say that there are 6 aris, that means the enemies of a human mind, and they are Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mada, Matsara. Kama is the excessive sexual desire. Krodha is anger. Lobha is greed. Moha is excessive temptation. Mada is arrogance and excessive egoism. Matsar is jealousy and envy. Out of this, the way it works out, Krodha, that is anger, is one of the 6 enemies which really destroys a human behavior to its lowest level. It brings the human being to its lowest level. And therefore, a person who cannot control the anger, a person who reacts while the person is in a very angry mood, the logic, the rationale of the person is lost completely. And that's why it could destroy, and completely devastated the person himself and all the people around the person. So that's how the anger is. Now what happens is when we think of emotion and passion, emotion is very much it's something like a sensation. It's a strong, crucial sensation. Emotion is to feel. It has a very powerful effect on human behavior. But how does it affect? Well, there are two primary causes, which is one is love, the other one is fear. And I think all the emotions are, I would believe, the variables of these two, love and fear. So when you the maternal love, or when love, or when you love country or community or society, these are all coming out of the love part of the strong emotion. Whereas fear, hating somebody, wanting to destroy somebody, basically anger-related activities, they stem from this fear concept of the emotion. When we talk of emotions, many times we get sort of misled, or we get a little bit confused between emotion and passion. But actually, a powerful state of emotion, or a very strong feeling, strong sensation of an emotion, is passion. A deep, deep feeling for a person, of a person, is actually the passion. And you know what? In my personal experience, as well as many of the experiences I have read about and I have seen some people, passion has worked more as a driving force to strive for some goal. For example, take my own example. I was very happy working as a researcher in cancer research, but I had this passion for classical music. And I used to say that to my children, to my family members, my husband, that you know what, I don't want to die without pursuing music. Classical music is my passion. I really don't want to die without pursuing and studying it. And sure enough, the emotion about music got so much stronger that I left my research, cancer research field, and I went into graduate school again, did my master's and PhD in classical music. And I would say passion was the foundation of my pursuit of this particular art. So passion, as people think, has a bad connotation. No, it is not. It all depends upon how you handle it. And I think it provides you a lot of energy. So that's how I would say passion is. Emotion is basically within yourself. I would say it's almost physical. It's a physical sensation because all of us, not most of us, all of us have a few different kinds of emotions among us, within us. So they are very much a part of our body, if I can go one step and say that. Whereas passion is something coming out of your mind, your heart, and it's very abstract. And a strong form of emotion becomes a passion. So this is how I understand. And emotion or passion, these fall in the same category as the six I said earlier. Everywhere, when anything goes out of the control, naturally it has a devastating effect. But to some extent, if it is within control and if it is used for a cause, and that cause is for good of everybody, then I think even these so-called human errors or human enemies can be your friend. For example, karma. Karma is a desire. But to limit your desire, something good, and apply rationale and logic, give you, and it will let you achieve your goals. Anger. We always think, oh, anger is so bad. But then, for example, if someone is coming and is attacking your family, your child, or someone that you love, you naturally should and would get angry. And at that time, if you take a step to destroy that attacker, that form of anger is not a vice, but it works as a virtue because you're protecting, you're defending someone you love or someone who's innocent and who could be a victim of that act. So even that has a bright silver lining, let's say. Same thing is with the rest of the enemies that are described in so much detail in the Hindu scriptures, Lobha, Moha, Mada, Matsara. Many of these, all of these work if you are putting a logic, if you're having a control on them, and if you are working with those using some rationale. So I would very much say that emotion and passion are the two ingredients of human mind, but after all, it's up to you. And to you is what? How to control, and if it is used and employed for the better of the society, the better of your family, and better for your country too. The patriots we see, all the people who are defending us on the borders, they have to have some form of anger, some form of passion within themselves. Then only they can protect, and then only they can defend the people, the innocent people within those borders. So I can quote Spree, but I think I will stop here and listen to you all first before I narrate a small story of Mahabharata.
Well, thank you so much, Jayashri. Now, Dr. Tony Barber for Buddhism's view on this.
Well, thank you, both of you. Buddhism looks at these things in a variety of different ways, and how the emotions are classified differs from, say, one Buddhist text to another. Although they deal with all the same emotions, but they kind of just put them into different categories according to, whichever author you prefer to look at. I'm going to base myself on maybe the most authoritative text across Buddhism, called the Abhidharmakosha. It was written somewhere around the 4th to 5th century, and it's very detailed. It's very well thought of, and traditionally, in many Buddhist countries, if you were training to be an educated Buddhist priest, somewhere at the beginning of your education, you would have started with this text. So probably right after you learned all the rules for being a monk, you would learn, some Abhidharma out of this book. And because, of course, Buddhism was born in India, just like Hinduism, so much of the technical language is shared. When my esteemed colleague began her little dissertation, all the Sanskrit terms that she used are very familiar because we use pretty much the same terms. From the Abhidharmakosha, they talk about a number of emotions. So we would have attachment and anger, which I'll get back to. Maybe delusion or confusion, something along that lines, right? Moha, I think is the proper term there. And then, of course, pride and doubt. And in Buddhism, wrong views is also considered to be a passion. So before I get exactly into the notion of anger, I wanted to speak kind of just generally about all of these emotions. From the Buddhist perspective, these are all of these are thoughts, or maybe thought systems, but the difference between these thoughts and other thoughts that we have is that these come are held very closely by our ego or our self. And so they're much more direct, and that's why we often feel them even physically, right? So if we take today's topic, anger, normally when you're angry, like your nose will start to flare out and your breathing rapid, and maybe your face will change color, and so on, right? So there's, because this thought is so close to the ego, that it has even physical effects where, if like we're thinking about particle physics, it probably doesn't have the same physical effect on us. But it's just thought, and because it's a thought, it can be dealt with, according to Buddhism, in the same way that we deal with many other thoughts, right? Anger, if we look at the Theravada school, so that's the form of Buddhism you would find in, say, Sri Lanka or Thailand today. Although in ancient times it was, of course, all across India and beyond. If we look at in that system, it's treated as, of course, a negative emotion, something that needs to be generally controlled, but not much different in its kind of generic level to desire or one of the other emotions. In the Mahayana form of Buddhism, which is what you find today in Nepal, Tibet, China, Korea, Japan, Vietnam, Mongolia, and elsewhere, it takes on a very different significance. And that's because in the Mahayana, it has kind of two cornerstones to its tradition. One, of course, is wisdom, which comes from meditation and study of scripture, and the other is compassion. Compassion is extremely important in Mahayana, and the Mahayana texts teach that anger is the direct enemy or opposition to compassion. It's very hard to be compassionate when you're angry at somebody, right? And although we can recognize a kind of justifiable anger, if someone's attacking your family member or your community or something like that, anger might be quite useful, and it's spoken about. But in general, it generally has a negative connotation with it, as something that we should learn to control, even if it might be justified. And so the meditation tradition tries to put a little bit of space between you and these thoughts, particularly what we would call, the more emotional or the passions, using passion in the old sense of the word. Put a little bit of space there so that you're a little bit more in control of your emotional state, and not your emotional state is in control of you, right? So road rage is something like you might want to get a little control over, although I personally understand it, but it's not exactly where you want to go, right? It doesn't help you get to the other place any faster. So a little bit of distance, a little bit of control over your things, and in particular, because Mahayana puts a lot of emphasis on service to others and compassion for others, and all of this, then obviously anger is in conflict with that kind of fundamental concept that motivates the entire tradition.
Thanks so much, Tony, there. That's Dr. Barber. So to just go over kind of quickly here, a little bit similar to both of your talks here around anger, is there's a different ways of looking at it in the Christian tradition. Primarily, though, just looking at it from the Western point of view, that there's a tradition within Western Catholicism of always putting anger under temperance. Now, temperance is this idea that we need to have the law of moderation in all things. So if you go down to sit and have a turkey dinner, you're going to be, I mean, even though it's sort of a feast day, maybe it's Thanksgiving or something like that, you still have to sort of watch your portions, because of course food has a purpose, and the end purpose of food is sustenance, of course, and joy that it brings you. And so anger in some senses is an imbalance of temperance, of not doing the right thing or the wisest thing at the right time for the right purpose. And so you see this in the Christian tradition, even in the law of Moses, right at the beginning of the Bible, where the Ten Commandments come down to Moses. And it's, of course, not just the Ten Commandments, but there is very sort of strict dietary laws and other things that Christians would look at this as sort of already kind of teaching the natural law of temperance. And so you also see here too this certain laws that were sort of steering people away to be more patient, and that anger is somewhat of an imbalance. But it's interesting though, because you get also at the same time though this idea that that anger has its place. So Jesus, when he's in the temple and he sees everyone sort of trying to sell things and to use the temple as kind of a means to get money out of poor people and other things, that, I mean, he's outraged. First of all, that they've sort of desecrated a holy place, and secondly, they've turned God's temple into this sort of this great ground of selling things. So he overthrows table, he makes a whip of cords, and at the same time, though, Jesus is also speaking about anger. He says if anyone's angry with their brother or sister and tries to bring a gift to the altar of the temple, I mean, they should leave their gift at the altar and then go and be reconciled with their brother or sister, and then come back and offer it. This idea that you can't even sort of have communion with God unless you've sort of forgiven that anger against the other person. And so you get this idea within the New Testament. St. Paul says, be angry, but sin not. Now, of course, he's not kind of encouraging anger, but there is sometimes a place for it. Just like kind of temperance is the right balance of things, there's sometimes a time for anger. And so we also get different things within the Christian tradition. For example, in the Proverbs, it says, a gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. So again, there's sort of very rare occasions where it would be sort of justified and useful. And indeed, we want to be in control of ourselves and to have sort of an understanding of who we are and what we should do at the right time. But at the same time, though, it's sometimes useful if the end is to aim towards the good. And so how do we actually sort of make this practical within the Western Catholic tradition? Of course, there's different ways of looking at anger. There's the Eastern tradition, which is a little bit different. But the Western tradition generally will always frame it under temperance. The problem, of course, of all sin, at least within the Western tradition of Catholicism, is pride or ego. And so if we're sort of focused on ourselves and what we want, this will lead to a lack of temperance. And so just to give the example again of sort of overindulging in foods at a table. Again, we'll go up to the turkey and we'll kind of take off 3 strips of this. And one of the things also that the church fathers said is that it's very hard for a person who's focused on pride or ego to fast. It's a very hard thing to do, to sort of avoid certain foods. And so they recommend fasting as a way actually out of anger and out of lust too as well. These are all connected according to them. And so it's this lack of temperance that will actually lead to a wrong use of anger. So our focus should be, how do we sort of restore the right view of temperance, of using the right things at the right time in the right way, and that will sort of be our way out of sort of unrational or irrational anger. Okay, so maybe if we can go on to the questions here, and then whoever would like to respond first. So when, and we talked about this a little bit, when are people justified in taking revenge, if ever? I know we didn't actually speak directly about revenge, but maybe about kind of anger. When are people justified in taking anger? But let's focus now on revenge. Is there ever a time within your religions that anyone should ever take revenge?
Revenge, can I go?
Yeah, go ahead, yeah. Thanks, Jayashree.
Yeah. Revenge by itself has a very, very bad and evilish connotation. But if you think that even the revenge, even a bad thing of like revenge has two sides, one would look at it in those two different lights. One is, if you apply anger to revenge, definitely it is very much an evilish act, and it becomes a very bad vice a person to take a revenge. Avenging anyone is not a good thing, for sure. But at the same time, let's take the scenario where we are being governed by really very corrupt politicians, let's say. And by virtue of teaching him a lesson, we decide not to vote for him. And we make sure that the person is not governing anymore. He is no longer in the position that he was, where he was doing a lot of bad things and corruption and lying and all these things. So that's something, democratic revenge, let's call it. And it doesn't become a revenge per se, but it becomes a teaching a lesson to the person who's not being fair. So this is something I would look at revenge, the concept of revenge.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much. That was insightful. I'm not altogether sure in the Buddhist scriptures of any example where revenge is framed in a positive light. It seems to me that at least two primary negative emotions would have to be involved. The first would be, of course, anger, and the second would be pride. So I just don't know of any example from my studies where revenge would be condoned in any way. Certainly teaching, people using all sorts of skillful methods is condoned and encouraged. But it's usually, supposed to be done from a kind of more, calm and insightful and compassionate approach than what we normally think of when we think of the word revenge. So interesting when you were speaking, Father Adrian, that there's a expression from the Dharmapada, a very ancient Buddhist text, kind of summarizes a lot of teachings, where the Buddha said, "You can only conquer hatred with love," so I think that kind of concept fits here, where that kind of pride and anger and whatnot would need to be addressed in a more type of loving, compassionate type of way than in revenge. Now that doesn't mean people get to do whatever they want. That's a different thing altogether. Here we're talking about the emotion involved with revenge, and not necessarily trying to make people be responsible for their actions and bring them to a different understanding of how they're affecting the environment and the people around them. That's one thing. But coming at it from the revenge side, that would be a completely different thing. So that's how I would understand it.
So the same as Dr. Barber here, that in Christianity, I mean, there's, I'm even thinking kind of like, the deepest sort of text here, and my big knowledge of them, but there really is no time that revenge is sort of looked at as a good thing. I mean, we do see times, of course, where the sort of justice is with the Lord, and that's repeated concept throughout Scripture, that it's kind of, that is something that's sort of like God's, and that's not our world, and we should not even barely even think to step into that world, because as human beings, it's an area that we should never go into, because every time that a prophet tried to do that, or another person within Scripture, Holy Scripture, or even the history of the church, whenever they tried to do that, they just got into deeper trouble and into deeper self-obsession and sin. So there's almost, it's kind of like it's out of the vocabulary. It's just automatically thought of as a word. But though, I mean, in our daily lives, I don't know what both of you think here, but I mean, I think it's a big concept that, I mean, a lot of people have to deal with too. But I mean, Christianity at least is unanimous in sort of any reference. I mean, the closest you can get to that is justice is with the Lord. But again, that leaves you to do nothing, almost. Of course, seek justice yourself too. I mean, we have to have just societies, but this idea that I need to come and sort of bring justice to the world through my personal kind of ego, kind of upsetting things and making things to my own subjective reality, I mean, that's always a problem. So,
In the sort of the East Asian Buddhist way of looking at things, you might think that you're getting justice, right? But of course, the person who's receiving your beneficial revenge is not thinking they're getting justice. They're thinking they're getting the short end in this deal, which leads into this kind of cycle where you guys get trapped, and sometimes that goes on over lifetimes. Right, where like you're up today, and then the other person's up tomorrow, and so we never know when the end of it is. And the only way to end it is through love and compassion. It's certainly not going to be continuing on with the cycle.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we also have an idea of that our abilities as humans is very, very limited. So we can, our ability to see the future is not very good, and so a lot of times things that may look unjust today, tomorrow might have been the greatest thing that ever happened, and we just don't know, and there's no way for us to know. So it's good if we don't get too caught up in this whole idea. On a relative level, of course, I mean, everyone wants justice at the court and so on and so forth, and that's all fine. But on a sort of bigger level or a deeper level, we have to understand that these things are very limited, and our ability with all of it is also quite limited.
Yeah, no, totally. One of the things. Oh, sorry, Jayashri, go ahead. Yeah.
Could I just add? See, normally revenge is also, some people take revenge as a wild justice, okay? Something like a wild justice. But if you think of revenge in a warfare, let's say, and it's a retaliation against the enemies, or retaliation against something that itself is causing harm to the good, harm to the society, or harm to the community. In that case, retaliation becomes wild justice, which has another name called revenge. For example, in the Hindu scriptures, 5,000-7,000 years ago, when we have Goddess Kali, Goddess Durga, They have killed the demons out of maternal love for her children. Now that's a justice taught to the devil or the demon to protect her children. Same thing that we see even in the animal kingdom. That a mother with her cubs, if you try to kill one of the cubs or harm the cubs, the mother is going to wise justice. That's a justice done to the person who himself is actually causing harm to the person or to the animal or to the cub of the mother. So revenge, again I said, it has, otherwise in a colloquial general term, it is very bad. You don't avenge something. You don't harm somebody, and you don't hold something in your mind and then I'm going to be even with this person. It's like eye for an eye. No, that is the usual meaning taken by people. When it is a justice done in a wild justice, let's say, done to retaliate something or someone who has been not good, who has been hurtful, who has been harmful to the good of the people, to the entire society or community, that revenge takes a different form. It becomes a justice. It is just. It certainly does not remain that typical colloquial general understanding of the word revenge. That's all I want to say.
No, that's good thing. And actually, one of the things, at least kind of putting the Christian interpretation of, because that is, it's in different places, but this idea of an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Maybe this is kind of getting onto something. Is that where you see that in the Christian scriptures and also in the Jewish scriptures, it's in the context of a legal setting. So it's not sort of like a person kind of thinking like, oh, this person hurt me and then I'm going to go take their eye because they took my eye. No, you have to take that person to court. You have to have two witnesses that sort of saw that thing happening, which, some people might kind of argue that the legal system that's asked for in the law of Moses earlier on in the Old Testament, what we would call, it doesn't allow for a lot of management of justice, but that's the framework of an eye for an eye, tooth for tooth. It's not just like sort of I have something against my neighbor. You have to bring that neighbor to court. You have to have witnesses. You have to have legal proceedings, and then only after that point can actually sort of that charge be made. And even within the Christian tradition, that has been kind of, we said that the law has been fulfilled in the sense that the law of love will usurp what had happened before in the old covenant or the old kind of promise and law of God. So that's different. But maybe let's move into the next question here. How is anger related to unforgiveness? If anyone wants to go with that.
Anger related to forgiveness.
Unforgiveness or not forgiving.
Forgiveness. Unforgiveness.
Maybe it is a better word. I don't know if I got the right form there for me. Not forgiving.
Anger and unforgiveness in a way are absolutely like they are as different as day and night actually, in a way. But I will. Tony, you go first, and let me think over it a little bit.
Okay. Thank you. Actually, it seems to me that anger is kind of a foundation for unforgiveness, in that you holding on to that anger with regard to a particular type of incident or whatever from a different person is also a way for you to hold on to that person, but hold on to that person in negative light, instead of letting it go and saying, okay, I'll forgive you. So the unforgiving part of it doesn't allow you to move outside of your anger. Your anger is what's maintaining that unforgiven situation, which means you're kind of frozen. You're frozen in that negative past event, so you're stuck. You're emotionally stuck. To get beyond that, right? You need to deal with your anger, but and then move to being able to forgive. Usually in Buddhism, the way, we have meditational ways that we try to deal with that, but one of the other ways, more kind of let's say cognitive ways of dealing with it is through gratitude. Right? Start to try to find, even if it's just little things that you can be grateful for with regard to whatever the triggering incident was, and then try to move from having some gratitude to looking at, well, look at both sides had to be involved. You can't have this type of a situation all from one side. Or usually, maybe in some, bizarre event, but generally, both sides are involved to some extent. And so in that way. So Buddhist texts don't talk as much about forgiving per se, but they do talk about trying to develop gratitude and for people, even the people who we might at the moment think have done us wrong or owe us something, or whatever the driving concern is behind the anger situation. So there's actually a very interesting whole psychology that was developed in Japan, based on this idea of developing gratitude. So it's not very popular over here, but it's used quite often over there. And it all comes out of this Buddhist idea.
Yeah.
Any reflections there, Jayashri? Or?
For sure, yeah. I was just thinking about it, Father. Anger actually is a part of being human. I take it as very much our own, one of our basic emotions. But it doesn't have to control us. Otherwise, it can ruin our life too. Because even in the world around us, we see that countless people lose their marriages because of anger. They lose their families, they lose their jobs, their businesses, even their health of anger. And I think that could be one of the reasons why so many people have come up with anger management courses. So yes, it's very much in today's society, anger management. Now, unforgiveness and anger go hand in hand. Dealing with unforgiveness is the one that is the root cause of all these losses people suffer. But at the same time, if we convert this anger into something that we want to learn the life-changing strategies, it may work in our favor. And when it starts working in our favor, automatically, very naturally, we start being out of that unforgiving mode, and we start developing a sense of gratitude within ourselves. And that also stems from the feeling of forgiveness. So having a sense of gratitude and sense of forgiveness is after we control the anger, which could and may ruin our life. So basically, again, it is in our control. Now the same thing has been told over and over again in most of, or I would say all of the Hindu scriptures, that anger is one of the root cause, and unforgiveness is, which is the result of being excessively angry, is the root cause of the self-destruction of the person who was angry. So the first thing is to bring that anger in control. And earlier we talked about revenge. There are many ways of taking a revenge, but if you think revenge is also from, if you give what should I say, if you give revenge a beautiful connotation of forgiveness, if someone is hurting me and I said, listen, you are hurting me because you yourself are hurt. So by saying that, what I'm doing is I'm forgiving the person who's hurting me. At the same time, my way of avenging his hurting me is a positive, outcome. So I don't know if I made myself clear, but I'm right now understanding what I said. I don't want to be angry and unrevengeful, and unforgiveness should be there. When I'm angry, I should control it. I should develop that sense of gratitude, and if I understand the other party, and if I feel that this person is hurting me or harming me because this person himself or herself is hurt, or doesn't understand that this person is hurting me, that understanding within me automatically gives me that feeling of forgiving that other person. So basically that anger automatically is reduced completely to forgiving the person as well as avenging the person in a very beautiful, positive way. Who knows, the person will be wizened, and the person will realize, oh my God, what was I going to do? Was I going to hurt this person? But this person is so good that person made me realize that I'm the one who is the hurt party. I'm the one who is the ignorant party. But now I understand. And now I am knowledgeable that I should be doing that. So in a way, anger and unforgiveness hand in hand, but at the same time, if we again exercise our own control on anger, it can result into forgiveness. It can result into the betterment of the other person or the enemy. Something like that. Anger can trigger this. At the same time, human control, the brain control over the anger can help all of us.
That's great, thank you.
Can I pick up on something she just said? Yeah, in Buddhism, across all the traditions, there are 4 meditations that are used, and these 4 are called Brahma Vihara. If I translate it, something like exalted stations, right? 2 of those, one is loving kindness and one is compassion. Loving kindness is understood as wanting the other person, or could be an animal, to be having a good life, and compassion is wanting them not to suffer. And in these meditations, which lead to very, very deep states of mind, but in these meditations, you move from, people who you respect and think are worthy, honorable people, to, people who you would consider your enemy, or you don't respect. And this is the whole purpose, right? So you try to develop the sentiment that you want even them to have a good life, even them to not suffer, because you recognize, as she was saying, they're hurting too, right? Yes, in the present situation might be very terrible, and the 2 of you had some incident or whatever, but they're still suffering, they're still hurting. right? And so we have these meditations that are, supposed to be leading you to this kind of forgiven place, although they don't use that word particularly. But that's the idea, right?
Oh, that's great. It's
Tony, sorry, Father.
Oh, okay.
Tony, I like your idea about the compassion. Your idea in the sense what you talked about compassion. Actually, by releasing anger or resentment or whatever we have, I think once a person starts feeling empathy and compassion, and sometimes it's possible that you actually develop affection for the person who wronged you.
Yes.
So, which is very good. This is an excellent outcome. The person controls the anger and starts feeling compassionate towards the other person. So basically, forgiving that person is excellent for both. The one who has hurt you or wronged you, and the person who gets angry but controls it and develops compassion. So it's a win-win situation for both. Yes.
It's also great for the karma.
I like kind of both of your reflections here in terms of, I think in some ways, it's interesting because within the Christian tradition, for example, you have this phrase from scripture, and you might have heard at a wedding. It's like a typical kind of wedding reading depict that love is patient, love is kind. But there's one part that says that love always hopes. The fact that if we're kind of like loving or loving kindness for someone is we look at any person here in the world and anything, and we sort of say like, you have potential. And that I think is the beginning of, developing a love for that person. I mean, we would frame it in terms of seeing the image of God in that person, that whoever they are, they were created in the image of God. And so even though they've done these terrible things to me or to other people, it's love always hopes. Because, how can we not sort of love a person unless we see the good in that person? And so, of course, it's not sort of like deceiving ourselves. We're not sort of going to be like, we pick up the phone and someone from Canada Revenue Agency, quote unquote, is calling us, and we hope that they have the best kind of intentions in mind. But I'm sure there's some goodness in that person trying to scam us on the other line. Maybe a final question for us here, just for us to wrap up. We'll wrap up in a few minutes here, but actually, you know what? Instead of having a question, why don't we just kind of have a little bit of time just to, any final reflections on this, or how we sort of apply this daily to our lives? And our viewers have already seen the many sort of areas where actually, there's a lot of links that, I think all of us were not necessarily even aware of, and some deeper perspectives that we've all went into through this discussion.
Could I go now?
Oh yeah, of course, Jayshree. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I think Father Adrian and Tony, the first person that I would forgive is myself, because at any given moment, I think I'm doing the best I can. So best is to forgive myself, because many times anger is a helpful emotion, yes, but many times I could be doing wrong to others in being angry. At the same time, when I'm ready and conscious about it, I want to be kind to myself, and thereby I will control or rather manage my anger. When I'm ready to forgive myself, that will also trigger forgiving others. Because just as I'm flawed and I'm imperfect, so is everyone else. So why should we hold on to someone's mistake and get angry when we know that we are also flawed and equally imperfect as others are? So by forgiving myself, I'm forgiving, or by learning to forgive myself, I'm also learning to forgive others. And when I'm doing this, like Tony spoke about compassion and you about love earlier, directing or redirect my thoughts towards these beautiful emotions and sentiments of a human mind, I would say that challenging my negative thoughts and using these compassion and love would be wonderful to develop that positive thinking within myself and get rid of the bitterness, which could cloud my own rationale and my own logic, right? So I would redirect my thoughts, and by redirecting my thoughts, perspective would change also. My perspective would change to looking at many flaws of others. See, we are very quick in finding flaws in other people, but we forget that we are equally human like they are, and rather they are also equally human like we are, and they are also, entitled to err just as we are. But we forget our errors, we forget our flaws, and we always point out their flaws. So, these are the things I would say that anger is causing. And instead of just depending on the scriptures and all that, let's learn from them. Let's imbibe some of the beautiful concepts that are narrated in those scriptures. But I want to live in the present. Earlier, I gave an example of the democratic anger or democratic revenge. It's very much applicable in today's world. You find that some people are being very unjust and unkind to the deserving people, then we have a way to remove that person, have to exercise and employ that way, remove that person, and that is not revenge. So anger, revenge, unforgiveness, all these terms which are generally regarded as very strong negative terms, if we look at it with a little bit of different lens, rather, we may be able to employ the same concepts, a little bit of rationale and logic to our own benefit and for the benefit of the society. That's how I would look at it.
Yeah, thanks, Jayashree. Any final thoughts there, Dr. Barber, that you want to add before we kind of close off here?
Well, the Buddha is perfect, and personally, I am perfectly imperfect. So, but what's kind of struck me about our conversation here is that first of all, anger and of course the other emotions are something that is so very human. It's not a Christian thing. It's not a Buddhist thing. It's not a Hindu thing. Or a Taoist thing or whatever, right? It's a human thing. And what all of our traditions are doing, even though the theology is quite different between the three of us, but what all of them are trying to do is trying to tell us two very important things. One is you have to be greater than yourself. Right? Rise above these.
Sorry, Tony, we lost you there for a sec.
Okay.
Do you mind repeating that about 30 seconds ago, if that's okay? Because it was just such a good point. So.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm humbled. What I was trying to say was that even though the sort of theological stance between Catholics and Hindus and Buddhists and whatnot is quite different, and the way that we understand the human situation in terms of sort of the transcendental or the greater picture of things is also quite different. But what all of these traditions are doing is they're saying two things that are very much the same, and that is that the human condition when experiencing these negative emotions, and of which anger is one of the primary ones, You know, we have to rise above this. We have to be greater than ourselves. And the way that we do this is through some sort of discipline. Now, it might be meditational, it might be prayer, it might be, getting a different understanding, different perspective on things. It might be by cultivating, different attitudes through our devotions or through our practices and whatnot. But they're all saying the same thing. We have to be more than our kind of base self, and the way to get there is through some sort of spiritual discipline. And so in a lot of ways, it seems to me this is a very kind of productive conversation, because it's pointing to something that is very much human, right? And not necessarily for this religion or for Eastern people or for Western people or all these kind of categories that we use to define and distinguish things. But at the base of it all, we're basically the same people, right?
I mean, going at it from this anthropological perspective, I mean, in some senses, it's, that's the great sort of insight that religion provides to anthropology, because by itself, it's just sort of analyzing human beings without this spiritual component, and definitely missing something. So, but thank you both again for all your help. Jayshree, I apologize here again that you're only able to join me by phone. So I think every time you speak in the video, my face will come up. So, but Jayshree's here on the good old trusty iPhone. So thank you again, both of you, and we'll be stopping right here, the recording.
All right, it was a pleasure.
Tony, thank you. Father Adrian, thank you. And you both have a wonderful evening.
Same to you.
Okay. Bye now.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Ciao.